ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, my dear friends. This is fifth videos on the talks by Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was a world-famed Advaita Vedanta sage. I'll start with talk number 15, and the topics discussed are in a reminiscent mood is psychic powers, American men and women, opposition from the bigoted Christians, self-surrender and inertia. Nag Mahashaya plays the rented Math premises at Balliol time February 1898. Swamiji has removed the mutt from Alam Bazar to Nilambar Babu's garden at Balliol. He is very glad to have come to these new premises, he said to the disciple when the latter came. See how the Ganges flows by and what a nice building. I like this place. This is the ideal kind of place for mutt. It was then afternoon. In the evening, the disciple found Swamiji alone in the upper story, and the talk went on various topics, in the course of which he wanted to know about Swamiji's boyhood days. Swamiji began to say, from my very boyhood I was a daredevil sort of fellow, otherwise do you think I could make a tour round the world without a single copper in my pocket? In boyhood, Swamiji had a great pred- predilection for hearing the chanting of the Ramayana by professional singers. Wherever such chanting would take place in the neighborhood, he would attend it, leaving sport and all. Swamiji related how, while listening to the Ramayana, on some days he would be so deeply engrossed in it as to forget all about home and would have no idea that it was late at night and that he must return home and so forth. One day during the chant, he heard that the monkey god Hanuman lived in banana orchard. Forthwith, he was so much convinced that when the chant was over, he did not go home straight that night but loitered in a banana orchard close to his house with the hope of catching sight of Hanuman till it was very late in the night. In his student life, he used to pass the daytime only in playing and gambling with his mates and study at night, bolting the doors, and none could know when he prepared his lessons. The disciple asked, did you see any vision, sir, during your school days, Swamiji? While at school one night I was with closed door, meditating with closed door, and had a fairly deep concentration of mind. How long I meditated in that way I cannot say. It was over and I still kept my seat when from the southern wall of that room a luminous figure stepped out and stood in my front. There was a wonderful radiance on its visage, yet there seemed to be no play of emotion on it. It was the figure of a sannyasin, absolutely calm, seven-headed, and staff and Kamandalu, a sannyasin's wooden water bowl in hand. He gazed at me for some time and seemed as if he would address me. I stood, gazed at him in speechless wonder. Then a kind of fright seized me. I opened the door and hurried out of the room. Then it struck me that it was foolish of me to run away like that, that perhaps he might say something to me. But I have never met that figure since. Many a time and often have I thought that if again I saw him, I would no more be afraid but would speak to him, but I met him no more. Disciple, did you ever think on the matter afterwards, Swami? Yes, but I could find no clue to its solution. I now think it was the Lord Buddha from whom I saw. After a short pause, Swamiji said, when the mind is purified, when one is free from the attachment for lust and gold, one sees lots of visions, most wonderful ones. But one should not pay heed to them. The aspirant cannot advance further if he sets his mind constantly on them. Have not you heard that Sri Ramakrishna used to say, countless jewels lie under cared for in the outer courts of my beloved Lord's sanctum. We must come face to face with the Atma. What is the use of setting one's mind on vagaries like those? After saying these words, Swamiji sat silent for a while, lost in thought over something. He then resumed, well, while I was in America, I had certain wonderful powers developed in me. By looking into people's eye, I could fathom in a trice the contents of their mind. The workings of everybody's mind would be patent to me like a fruit on the palm of one's hand. To some I used to give out these things, and of those to whom I communicated these, many would become my disciples. Whereas those who came to mix with me with some ulterior motive would not, on coming across this power of mine, even venture into my presence anymore. When I began lecturing in Chicago and other cities, I had to deliver every week some 12 or 15 or even more lectures at times. This excessive strain on the body and mind would exhaust me to a degree. I seemed to run short of subjects for lectures and was anxious where to find new topics for the morrow's lecture. New thoughts seemed altogether scarce. One day after the lecture, I lay thinking of what means to adopt next. The thought induced a sort of slumber, and in that state I heard as if somebody stood by me and was lecturing many new ideas and new veins of thought, which I had scarcely heard or thought of in my life. On awakening, I remembered them and reproduced them in my lecture. I cannot enumerate how often this phenomenon took place. Many days did I hear such lectures while laying in bed. Sometimes the lecture would be delivered in such a loud voice that the inmates of adjacent rooms would hear the sound and ask me the next day, with whom Swamiji were you talking so loudly last night? I used to avoid the question somehow. It was a wonderful phenomenon. The disciple was wonderstruck at Swamiji's words and after thinking deeply on the matter said, sir, then you yourself must have lectured like that in your subtle body, and sometimes it would be echoed by the gross body also. Swamiji listened and replied, well, maybe. The topic of his American experiences came up. Swamiji said, in that country, the women are more learned than men. They are all well versed in science and philosophy, and that's why they would appreciate and honor me so much. The men are grinding all day at their work and have very little leisure, whereas the women, by studying and teaching in the schools and colleges, have become highly learned. Whichever side you turn your eyes in America, you see the power and influence of women. Disciple, well, sir, did not the bigoted Christians oppose you? Swamiji, yes, they did. When people began to honor me, then the Padris were after me. They spread many slanders about me by publishing them in the newspapers. Many asked me to contradict these slanders, but I never took the slightest notice of them. It is my firm conviction that no great work is accomplished in this world by low cunning. So, without paying any heed to these wild slanders, I used to work steadily at my mission. The upshot I used to find was that often my slanderers, feeling repentant afterwards, would surrender to me and offer apologies by contradicting the slanders in the papers themselves. Sometimes it so happened that, learning that I had been invited to a certain house, somebody would communicate those slanders to my host, who hearing them would leave home locking his door. Oh my God. Who hearing them would leave home locking his door. When I went there to attend the invitation, I found it was deserted and nobody was there. Again, a few days afterward, these themselves learning the truth would feel sorry for their previous conduct and come to offer themselves as disciples. The fact is, my son, this whole world is full of mean ways of worldliness. But the men of real moral craze and discrimination are never deceived by these. Let the world say what it chooses. I shall treat the path of duty, know this to be the line of action for a hero. Otherwise, if one has to attend day and night to what this man says or that man writes, no great work is achieved in this world. Do you know this Sanskrit shloka? Let those who are versed in the ethical codes praise or blame. Let Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, come or go wherever she wishes. Let death overtake him today or after a century. The wise man never swerves from the path of rectitude. Let people praise you or blame you. Let fortune smile or frown upon you. Let your body fall today or after a yuga. See that you do not deviate from the path of truth. How much of tempests and waves one has to weather before one reaches the heaven of peace. The greater a man has become, the fiercer ordeal he has had to pass through. Their lives have been tested true by the touchstone of practical life, and only then have they been acknowledged great by the world. Those who are faint-hearted and cowardly sink their barks near the shore, frightened by the raging of waves on the sea. He who is a hero never cast a glance at these. Come what may, I must attain my ideal first. This is Praskara, manly endeavor. Without such manly endeavor, no amount of divine help will be of any avail to banish your inertia. Disciple is then reliance on divine help a sign of weakness. Swamiji, in the Shastras, real self-surrender and reliance on God has been indicated as the culmination of human achievement. But in your country nowadays, the way people speak of Deva or reliance on divine dispenses, dispensation is a sign of death, the outcome of great cowardliness. Conjuring up some monstrous idea of Godhead and trying to saddle that with all your faults and shortcomings. Have not you heard Sri Ramakrishna's story about the sin of killing a cow? In the end, the owner of the garden had to suffer for the sin of killing the cow. Nowadays, everybody says, I am acting as I am being directed by the Lord, and thus throws the burden of both his sins and virtues on the Lord, as if he is himself like the lotus leaf in the water, untouched by it. If every free soul. But what really happens is that for the good I have the credit, but for the bad thou God art responsible. Praise be to such reliance on God. Without the attachment of the fullness of knowledge or divine love, such a state of absolute reliance on the Lord does not come. He who is truly and sincerely reliant on the Lord goes beyond all idea of the duality of God and bad. The brightest example of the attainment of this state among us at the present time is Naga Mahasaya. A man had laid out a beautiful garden into which a cow strayed one day and did much injury. The man in rage gave some blows to the cow which killed her. Then, to avoid the terrible sin, he bethought himself of a trick, knowing that Indra was the presiding deity of the hand. He tried to lay the blame on him. Indra, perceiving his sophist sophistry, appeared on the scene in the guise of a Brahmin, and by a number of questions drew from him the answer that each and every item in connection with that great garden was the Nagamahasa. Then the conversation drifted to the subject of Nagamahasa. Swamiji said, one does not find a second devoted bhakta like him. Oh, when shall I see him again, disciple? He will soon come to Calcutta to meet you. So, Mother Nag Mahasaya's wife has written to me. Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna used to compare him to King Janaka. A man with such control over all the senses, one does not hear of, even much less come across. You must associate with him as much as you can. He is one of Sri Ramakrishna's nearest disciples. The Indra story continue. Man's own handiwork. Whereupon Indra exposed his cunning with the cutting remark. Well, everything here has been done by you, and Indra alone is responsible for the killing of the cow. Okay. Disciple. Many in our part of the country call him a madcap, but I have known him to be a great soul since the very first day of my meeting him. He loves me much and I have his fervent blessings, Swamiji. Since you have attained the company of such a Mahapurusha, what more have you to fear about? As an effect of many lives of tapasya, austerities, one is blessed with the company of such a great soul. How does he live at home? Disciple. Sir, he has got no business or anything of the kind. He is always busy in serving the guests who come to his house. Beyond the small sum the Pal Babu gives him, he has no other means of subsistence. His expenses, however, are like those in a rich family, but he does not spend a pice for his own enjoyment. All that expense is for the service of others. Service of others. This seems to be the great mission of his life. It sometimes strikes me that realizing the Atma in all creatures, he is engrossed in serving the whole world as a part and parcel of himself. In the service of others, he works incessantly and is not conscious even of his body. I suppose he always lives on the plane which you, sir, call the superconscious state of the mind. Swamiji, why should not that be? How greatly was he beloved of Sri Ramakrishna. In your East Bengal, one of Sri Ramakrishna's divine companions has been born in the person of Nag Mahasaya. By his radiance, Eastern Bengal has become effulgent. Talk number 16. Topics: Swami Vivekananda's experiences at Amarnath and Aksir Bhavani, hearing a divine voice, existence of ghosts and spirits, Swami Vivekananda's experience of disembodied spirit. Place: the rented mutt premises at Belur, year 1898, November. It is 2 or 3 days since Swamiji has returned from Kashmir. His health is indifferent. When the disciple came to Mutt, Swami Brahmananda said, since returning from Kashmir, Swamiji does not speak to anybody. He sits in one place, wrapped in thought. You go to him and by conversations try to draw his mind a little towards worldly objects. The disciple coming to Swamiji's room in the upper story found him sitting as if immersed in deep meditation. There was no smile on his face. His brilliant eyes had no outward look, as if intent on seeing something within. Seeing the disciple, he only said, you have come, my son. Please take your seat, and lapsed into silence. The disciple, seeing the inside of his left eye reddened, asked, how is it that your eye is red? That is nothing, said Swamiji, and was again silent. When, even after a little troubled at heart and touching his feet, said, won't you relate to me what things you have seen at Amarnath? By the disciples touching his feet, the tensity of his mood was broken a little, as if his attention was diverted a little outwards. He said, since visiting Amarnath, I feel as if Shiva is sitting on my head for 24 hours and would not come down. The disciple heard it with speechless wonder. Swamiji, I underwent great religious austerities and Amarnath, and then in the Temple of Akshira Bhavani, go and prepare me some tobacco. I will relate everything to you. The disciple joyfully obeyed the order. Swamiji, slowly smoking, began to say, on the way to Amarnath, I made a very steep ascent on the mountain. Pilgrims do not generally travel by that path, but the determination came upon me that I must go by that path, and so I did. The labor of the strenuous ascent has told on my body. The cold there is so biting that you feel it like pin pricks. Disciple, I have heard that it is the custom to visit the image of Amarnath naked. Is it so? Swamiji, yes, I entered the cave with only my coffin on and my body smeared with the holy ashes. I did not then feel any cold or heat, but when I came out of the temple, I was benumbed by the cold. Disciple, did you see the holy pigeons? I have heard in that cold no living creatures are found to live, but a flight of pigeons from some unknown place frequents the place occasionally. Swamiji, yes, I saw three or four white pigeons. Whether they live in the cave or the neighboring hills, I could not ascertain. Disciple. Sir, I have heard people say that the sight of pigeons on coming out of the temple indicates that one has really been blessed with the vision of Shiva. Swamiji, I have heard the sight of the pigeons brings to fruition whatever desires you may have. Then Swamiji said on the way back he returned to Srinagar by the common route by which the pilgrims return. A few days after returning to Srinagar, he went to visit Akshir Bhavani Devi and staying there for 7 days worshipped the Devi and made homa to her with offerings of Akshir condensed milk. Every day he used to worship the Devi with a mound of Akshir as offering. One day, while worshipping, the thought arose in Swami's mind, Mother Bhavani has been manifesting her presence here for untold years. The Mohammedans came and destroyed her temple, yet the people of the place did nothing to protect her. Alas, if I were then living, I could never have borne it silently. When thinking in this strain, his mind was much oppressed with sorrow and anguish. He distinctly heard the voice of the mother saying, it was according to my desire that the Mohammedans destroyed their temple, this temple. It is my desire that I should live in a dilapidated temple, otherwise, can I not immediately erect a 7-story temple of gold here if I like? What can you do? Shall I protect you or shall you protect me? Swamiji said, since hearing that divine voice, I cherish no more plans. The idea of building mutts, etc., I have given up. As mother wills, so it will be. The disciple, speechless with wonder, began to think, did he not one day tell me that whatever I saw and heard was but the ego of the Atma within me, that there was nothing outside? And fearlessly spoke it out also. Sir, you used to say that divine voices are the ego of our inward thoughts and feelings. Swamiji gravely said, whether it be internal or external, if you actually hear with your ears such a disembodied voice, as I have done. Can you deny it and call it false? Divine voices are actually heard just as you and I are talking. The disciple, without controverting, accepted Swamiji's words, for his words always carried conviction. He then brought up the subject of departed spirits and said, "Sir, these ghosts and departed spirits we hear about, which the Shastras also amply corroborate, are all these true or not?" Swamiji: "Certainly they are true. Whatever you don't see, are they all false for that? Beyond your sight, millions of universes are revolving at great distances. Because you do not see them, are they non-existence for that? But then, do not put your mind on these subjects of ghosts and spirits. Your mental attitude toward them should be one of indifference. Your duty is to realize the Atma within this body. When you realize the Atma, ghosts and spirits will all be your slaves." Disciple: "But sir, I think that if one sees them, it strengthens one's belief in the hereafter and dispels all doubts about it." Swamiji: "You are heroes. Do you mean to say that even you shall have to strengthen your belief in the hereafter by seeing ghosts and spirits? You have read so many sciences and scriptures, have mastered so many secrets of this infinite universe. Even with such knowledge, you have to acquire the knowledge of the Atma by seeing ghosts and spirits. What a shame." Disciple: "Well, sir, have you ever seen ghosts and spirits?" Swamiji narrated that a certain deceased a relative of his used to come to him as a disembodied spirit. Sometimes it used to bring him information about distant events, but on verification, some of its information were not found to be correct. Afterwards, at a certain place of pilgrimage, Swamiji prayed for it mentally, wishing it might be released. Since then, he did not see it again. The disciple then questioned Swamiji if Shraddha or other obsequial ceremonies appeased the departed spirits in any Shraddha, that is Shraddha. The disciple then questioned Swamiji if Shraddha or other obsequial ceremonies appeased the departed spirits in any way. Swamiji replied, "That is not impossible." On the disciples asking for the grounds of that belief, Swamiji said, "I will explain the subject to you at length someday. There are irrefutable arguments to prove that the Shraddha ceremony appeases the departed beings. Today I don't feel well. I shall explain it to you another day." But the disciple did not get another opportunity to ask that question of Swamiji. Talk number 17. Topics: Composing a Sanskrit hymn about Bengali language and its style. Be fearless. Need for the study of scriptures. Result of self-realization. Place the rented mutt premises at Balliol Rear, 1898 November. The mutt is still situated in Nilambar Babu's garden house at Balliol. It is the month of November. Swamiji is now much engaged in the study and discussion of Sanskrit scriptures. The couplets beginning with Achandada Pratihata Yaha. He composed about this time today Swamiji composed the Haiman Om Harim Ritam etc. and making it over to the disciple said, see if there is any metrical defect in these stanzas. The disciple made a copy of the poem for this purpose. Talk number 17. Composing a Sanskrit hymn about Bengali language and its style, be fearless need for the study of scriptures, result of self-realization, place the rented month premises at Balliol year 1898 November. The mutt is still situated in Nilambar Babu's garden house at Balliol. It is the month of November. Swamiji is now much engaged in the study and discussion of Sanskrit strictures. The couplets beginning with Achandala Pratihata he composed about this time today Swamiji composed the hymn Om Harim Ritam etc. and making it over to the disciple said, see if there is any metrical defect in these stanzas. The disciple made a copy of the poem for this purpose. On this day, it seemed as if the goddess of learning has manifested herself on his tongue. With the disciple, he fluently talked for about 2 hours at a stretch in exceedingly melodious Sanskrit. After the disciple had copied the Haiman, Swamiji said, you see, as I write immersed in thought, grammatical slips sometimes occur. Therefore, I ask you all to look over them. Disciples, sir, those are not slips but the license of genius. Swamiji, you may so say, but why will other people assent to that? The other day I wrote an essay on what is Hinduism, and some among us you even are complaining that it is written in very stiff Bengali. I think like all other things, language and thought also becomes lifeless and monotonous in course of time. Such a state seems to have happened now in this country. On the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, however, a new current has set in thought and language. Everything has now to be recast in new mouths. Everything has to be propagated with the stamp of new genius. Look, for example, how the old moods of sannyasis are breaking, yielding place to a new mold by degrees. Society is protesting much against it, but is it of any avail? Neither are we frightened by that. The sannyasis of the present day have to go to distant countries for preaching, and if they go in an SBC mud, half nude like the sadhus of old, in the first place they won't be taken on board the ships, and even if they anyhow reach foreign countries in that dress, they will have to stay in jail. Everything requires to be changed a little according to place, time, and civilization. Henceforth, I am thinking of writing essays in Bengali. Literatures will perhaps rail at them. Never mind, I shall try to cast the Bengali language in a new mold. Nowadays, Bengali writers use too many verbs in their writings. This takes away the force of the language. If one can express the ideas of words with adjectives, it adds to the force of the language. Henceforth, try to write in that style. Try to write articles in that style in the Udbodhan. Do you know the meaning of the use of verbs in language? It gives a pause to the thought. Hence, the use of too many verbs in language is a sign of weakness, like quick breathing, and indicates that there is not much vitality in the language. That's why one cannot lecture well in the Bengali language. He who has control over his language does not make frequent breaks in his thoughts. As your physique has been rendered languid while living on a dietary of boiled rice and dal, similar is the case with your language. In food, in modes of life, in thought, and in language. Energy has to be infused. With the infusion of vitality all around and the circulation of blood in all arteries and veins, one should feel the throbbing of new life in everything. Then only will the people of this land be able to survive the present terrible struggle for existence. Otherwise, the country and the race will vanish in the developing shadows of death at no distant date. Disciples, sir, the constitution of the people of this country has been molded in a peculiar way through long ages. Is it possible to change that within a short time? Shivamiji, if you have known the old ways to be wrong, then why don't you, as I say, learn to live in a better way? By your example, 10 other people will follow suit, and by theirs, another 50 people will learn. By this process, in course of time, the new ideas will awaken in the hearts of the whole race. But even if after understanding you do not act accordingly, I shall know that you are wise in words only, but practically you are fools. Disciple, your words, sir, infuse great courage, enthusiasm, energy, and strength into the heart. Swamiji, by degrees the heart has to be strengthened. If one man is made, it equals the result of 100,000 lectures. Making the mind and the lips at one, the ideas has to be practiced in life. This is what Sri Ramakrishna meant by allowing no theft in the chamber of thought. You have to be practical in all spheres of work. The whole country has been ruined by masses of theories. He who is the true son of Ramakrishna will manifest the practical idea of religious ideas and will set to work with one pointed devotion without paying heed to the prattling of man or the society. Have not you heard of the couplet of Tulsi Das? The elephant walks the marketplace and 1,000 curs bark at him, so the sadhus have no ill feeling if worldly people slander them. You have to walk in this way. No count should be taken of the words of people. If one has to pay heed to their praise or blame, no great work can be accomplished in this life. Nayatma balhino bhai. The Atma is not to be gained by the weak. If there is no strength in body and mind, the Atman cannot be realized. First, you have to build the body by good nutritious food, then only will the mind be strong. The mind is but the subtle part of the food. You must retain great strength in your mind and words. I am now, I am low. Repeating these ideas in the mind, man belittles and degrades himself. Therefore, the Shastras say, Mukta bhimano mukto hi बच- बच्चों बड़ा अभिमान्यपि किं दन्तीति सत्ययम या मति सा gatir bhavet. He who thinks himself free, free he becomes. He who thinks himself bound, bound he remains. This popular saying is true as one thinks so often becomes. He alone who is always awake to the idea of freedom becomes free. He who thinks he is bound endures life after life in the state of bondage. It is a fact. This truth holds good both in spiritual and temporal matters. Those who are always downhearted and dispirited in this life can do no work. From life to life they come and go, wailing and mourning. The earth is enjoyed by heroes. This is the unfailing truth. Be a Hero always, I have no fear. Tell this to everybody. Have no fear. Fear is death. Fear is sin. Fear is hell. Fear is unrighteousness. Fear is wrong life. All the negative thoughts and ideas that are in this world have proceeded from this evil spirit of fear. This fear alone has kept the sun, air, and death in their respective places and functions, allowing, allowing none to escape from its bound. Therefore, the Shruti says, भयादस्याग्निलपति भयातपति सूर्यः भयादि भयादिदृश्व वायुश्च मृत्युर्धवति पच्चमै. Though fear of this fire burns, the sun heats. Through fear, Indra and Vayu are carrying on their functions, and death stalks upon this earth. When the gods Indra, Chandra, Vayu, Varuna will attain to fearlessness, then will they be one with the Brahma, and all this phantasm of the world will vanish. Therefore, I say, be fearless, be fearless. Swamiji, in saying these words, appeared in the eyes of the disciple like the very embodiment of fearlessness, and he thought how in his presence in the fear of death lives one and vanishes into nothingness. Swamiji continued, in this embodied existence, you will be tossed again and again on the waves of happiness and misery, prosperity and adversity, but know them all to be momentary duration. Never care for them. I am the worthless and deathless Atma, whose nature is intelligence. Implanting this idea firmly in your heart, you should pass the days of your life. I have no birth, no death. I am the Atma, untouched by anything. Lose yourself completely in this idea. If you can once become one with this idea, then in the hour of sorrow and tribulation, it will rise of itself in your mind, and you will not have to strive with difficulty to bring it up. The other day, I was a guest of Babu Priyanath Mukherjee at Baidyanath. There, I had such a spell of asthma that I felt like dying. But from within, with every breath, arose the deep toned sound, I am He, I am He. Resting on the pillow, I was waiting for the vital breath to depart and observing all the time that from within was being heard the sound of I am He, I am He. I could hear all along एक मोह नानास्ति किंचन. The Brahma, the one without a second, alone exists. Nothing manifold exists in the world. The disciple, struck with amazement, said, Sir, talking with you and listening to your realizations, I feel no necessity for the study of scriptures. Swamiji, no, scriptures have to be studied also. For the attainment of jnana, study of scriptures is essential. I shall soon open classes in the mutt for them. The Vedas, Upanishads, the Gita and Bhagavata should be studied in the classes, and I shall teach the Panini Ashtadhyayi. Disciple, have you studied the Ashtadhyayi of Panini? Swamiji, when I was in Jaipur, I met a great grammarian and felt a desire to study Sanskrit grammar with him. Although he was a great scholar in that branch, he had not much aptitude for teaching. He explained to me the commentary on the first aphorism for 3 days continuously. Still, I could not grasp a bit of it. On the fourth day, the teacher got annoyed and said, Swamiji, I could not make you understand the meaning of the first aphorism even in 3 days. I fear you will not be much benefited by my teaching. Hearing these words, a great self-reproach came over me. Putting food and sleep aside, I set myself to study the commentary on the first aphorism independently. Within 3 hours, the sense of the commentary stood explained before me as clearly as anything. Then going to my teacher, I gave him the sense of the whole commentary. My teacher, hearing me, said, "How could you gather the sense so excellently within 3 hours, which I failed to explain to you in 3 days?" After that, every day I began to read chapter after chapter within the greatest ease. Through concentration of mind, everything can be accomplished, even mountains can be crushed to atoms. Disciples, sir, everything is wonderful about you, Swamiji. There is nothing wonderful in this universe. Ignorance constitutes the only darkness which covers all things and makes them look mysterious. When everything is lighted by knowledge, the sense of mystery vanishes from the face of things. Even such an inscrutable thing as Maya, which brings the most impossible things to pass, disappears. Know him, think of him by knowing whom everything else is known. And when that Atma is realized, the purport of all scriptures will be perceived as clearly as a fruit on the palm of one's hand. The rishis of old attained realization and must we fail, we are also man. What has happened once in the life of one individual must through proper endeavor be realized in the life of others. History repeats itself. This Atma is the same in all. There is only a difference of manifestation in different individuals. Try to manifest this Atma and you will see your intellect penetrating into all subjects. The intellect of one who has not realized the Atma is one-sided, whereas the genius of the knower of Atma is all-embracing. With the manifestation of the Atma, you will find that science, philosophy, and everything will be easily mastered. Proclaim the glory of the Atma with the roar of a lion and impart fearlessness unto all beings by saying, "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached." Talk number 18. Swami Vivekananda's experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, extraordinary power of avatars. Place the rented mat premises at Vellore year 1898. The disciple is staying with Swamiji at the garden house of Nilambar Babu at Vellore for the last 2 days. Today, Swamiji has given permission to the disciple to stay in his room at night. When the disciple was serving Swamiji and massaging his feet, he spoke to him. "What folly, leaving such a place as this, you want to go back to Calcutta. See what an atmosphere of holiness is here. The pure air of the Ganges, what an assemblage of sadhus will you find anywhere a place like this?" Disciple, sir, as the fruition of great austerities in place past lives, I have been blessed with your company. Now bless me that I may not be overcome by ignorance and delusion any more. Now my mind sometimes is seized with a great longing for some direct spiritual realization. Swamiji, I also felt like that many times. One day in the Kasipur garden, I had expressed my prayer to Sri Ramakrishna with great earnestness in the evening at the hour of meditation. I lost the consciousness of the body and felt that it was absolutely non existent. I felt that the sun, moon, space, time, ether, and all had been reduced to a homogeneous mass and then melted far away into the unknown. The body consciousness had almost vanished, and I had nearly merged in the Supreme. But I had just a trace of the feeling of ego, so I could again return to the world of relativity from the samadhi. In this state of samadhi, all the difference between I and the Brahma goes away. Everything is reduced into unity, like the waters of the infinite ocean. Water everywhere, nothing else exists, language and thoughts all fail there. Then only is the state beyond mind and speech realized in its actuality. Otherwise, so long as the religious aspirant thinks or says, I am the Brahma, I and the Brahma, these two entities persist, there is the involved semblance of duality. After that experience, even after trying repeatedly, I failed to bring back the state of Samadhi. On informing Sri Ramakrishna about it, he said, if you remain day and night in that state, the work of the Divine Mother will not be accomplished. Therefore, you won't be able to induce that state again. When your work is finished, it will come again. Disciple, on the attainment of the absolute and transcendent Nirvikalpa Samadhi, can none return to the world of duality through the consciousness of egoism? Swamiji, Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the avatars alone can descend to the ordinary plane from that state of Samadhi for the good of the world. Ordinary jivas do not emerge in that state. They remain alive for a period of 21 days. After that, their body drops like a sheer leaf from the tree of Sansara. Disciple. When in Samadhi the mind is merged and there remain no waves on the surface of consciousness, where then is the possibility of mental activity and returning to the world through the consciousness of ego. When there is no mind, then who will descend from Samadhi to the relative plane and by what means? Swamiji, the conclusion of the Vedanta is that when there is a absolute samadhi and cessation of all modifications, there is no return from that state. As the Vedanta aphorism says, Anavirti Sabda, there is no return from scriptural text. But the avatars cherish a few desires for the good of the world. By taking hold of that thread, they come down from the superconscious to the conscious state. Disciple, but sir, if one or two desires remain, how can that state be called the absolute transcendent samadhi? For the scriptures say that in that state all the modifications of the mind and all desires are stamped out. Swamiji, how then can there be projection of the universe after Mahapralaya, final dissolution? And Mahapralaya, everything is merged in the Brahma. But even after that, one hears and reads of creation in the scriptures. That projection and contraction of the universe go on in the way found, like the fresh creation and dissolution of the universe after Mahapralaya. The superconscious and conscious states of avatars also stand to reason. Disciple, if I if I argue that at the time of dissolution, the seeds of further creation remain almost merged in Brahma, and that it is not absolute dissolution or nirvikalpa samadhi, Swamiji, then I shall ask you to answer how the projection of the universe is possible from Brahma, in which there is no shadow of any qualification, which is unaffected and unqualified. Disciple, why this is but a seeming projection? The reply to the question is given in the scriptures in this way, that the manifestation of creation from the Brahma is only an appearance like the mirage in the desert, but really there has been no creation or anything of the kind. This illusion is produced by Maya, which is the negation of the eternally existing Brahma and hence unreal. Shivamiji, if the creation is false, then you can also regard the Nirvikalpa Samadhi of Jiva and his return therefrom has seeming appearances. Jiva is Brahma by his nature. how can he have any experience of bondage? Your desire to realize the truth that you are the Brahma is also an hallucination in that case, for the scriptures say you are already that. Therefore, amev hi te bandha samadhi manu tishtati. This is verily your bondage that you are practicing the attainment of samadhi. Disciple, this is a great dilemma. If I am the Brahman, why don't I always realize it? Swamiji, in order to attain to that realization in the conscious place, some instrumentality is required. The mind is that instrument in us, but it is a non-intelligent substance. It only appears to be intelligent through the light of the Atma behind. Therefore, the author of the Panchadasi says, Vichayaveshana Shakti Etaneva Yubhati Sa. The Shakti appears to be intelligent by the reflection of the intelligence of the Atma, and the mind also appears to us like an intelligent substance. Therefore, it is certain that you won't be able to know the Atma, the essence of intelligence through the mind. You have to go beyond the mind, as there is no instrument beyond the mind, for only the Atma exists there. There the object of knowledge becomes the same as the instrument of knowledge. The knower knowledge and the instrument of knowledge becomes one and the same. It is therefore that the Shruti says, Vigyantarmare can vijanayate. Thought what you are to know the eternal subject. The real fact is that there is a state beyond the conscious plane where there is no duality of the knower knowledge and the instrument of knowledge, etc. When the mind is merged, that state is perceived. I say it is perceived because there is no other word to express that state. Language cannot express that state. Shankaracharya has styled it transcendent perception, approxanubhuti. Even after that transcendent perception, avatars descend to the relative plane and give glimpses of that. Therefore, it is said that the Vedas and other scriptures have originated from the perception of seers. The case of ordinary jivas is like that of the salt doll, which attempting to sound the depths of the ocean melted into it. Do you see? The sum and substance of it is, you have only got to know that you are the eternal Brahma. You are already that. Only the intervention of a non-intelligent mind, which is called Maya in the scriptures, is hiding that knowledge. When the mind composed of subtle matter is quelled, the Atma is effulgent by its own radiance. One proof of the fact that Maya or mind is an illusion is that the mind by itself is non-intelligent and of the nature of darkness, and it is the light of Atma behind that makes it appear as intelligent. When you will understand this, the mind will merge in the unbroken ocean of intelligence. Then you will realize, I am Atma Brahma. This Atma is the Brahma. Then Swamiji addressed the disciple said, you feel sleepy, then go to sleep. In the night of the disciple had a wonderful dream, and as a result of which he earnestly begged Swamiji's permission to worship him. Swamiji had to acquiesce, and after the ceremony was over, he said to the disciple, well, your worship is finished, but Premananda will be in a rage at your sacrilegious act of worshipping my feet in the flower tray meant for Sri Ramakrishna's worship. Before his words were finished, Swami Premananda came there, and Swamiji said to him, see what a sacrilege he has committed. With the requisites of Sri Ramakrishna's worship, he has worshipped me. Swami Premananda smiling said, well done, are you and Sri Ramakrishna different? Hearing which the disciple felt at ease. The disciple is an orthodox Hindu. not to speak of prohibited food. He does not even take food touched by another. Therefore, Swamiji sometimes used to call him by the name of priest. Swamiji, while he was eating biscuits with his breakfast, said to Swami Sadananda, Bring the priest in here. When the disciple came to Swamiji, he gave some portion of his food to him to eat. Finding the disciple accepting them without any demur, Swami said, Do you know what you have eaten now? They are made from eggs. In reply, the disciple said, Whatever may be in it, I have no need to know. Taking this sacramental food from you, I have become immortal. Thereupon Swami said, I bless you that from this day all your egoism of caste, color, high birth, religious merit and demerit, and all may vanish forever. So here I end this video. This video is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Please share this video with your friends, children, and many more people. Like the video and comment and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar. Namaste, my dear friend.